Hello, everyone. We'll do a quick round robin of intros. I'm going to pass you the ball.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning. James Clark. I lead our digital marketing and social media team for PepsiCo Foods North America. And probably one of the funnest things about that is that, I not only get to work with professionals from across Mexico, the US, and Canada, but also a breadth of brands from, best loved American brands like Doritos, Lay's, Tostitos, to some of our smaller, more nascent brands like Off the Eaten Path, Bear Snacks.
Sweet.
Happy to be here.
John?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm John Ostman. I lead e-commerce and digital for Jack Links in the House of Brands, which includes Jack Links, Larissa's Kitchen, Golden Island, and Wild River.
Amazing. John, you want to take it away?
Yeah. John Halverson, I'm the SVP of Consumer Experience for Mondelez International, more commonly Cadbury, Oreo, Ritz, Trident, Sour Patch Kids. So I feel I won the brand show-off game. There you go. I have chocolate. Winner.
Fantastic.
I prefer savory, but to each his own.
Take it to a vote later.
I'm David, founder of Social Native. I am humbled to be on the stage with these gentlemen. They are wicked smart, and there's a lot of knowledge here to share. I'm also humbled to be on stage in front of this audience, so we hope to learn alongside you. To jump into this together, I'll give you all some perspective. Earlier, we were talking a bit about social content and this shift in relevance. So one quick stat for the audience, and then we'll collaborate a bit on it. Last year, people watched 2.5 times more TikTok content than they did Netflix content. Chew on that for a minute. Netflix, you watch it, you watch a movie, that's 2 hours, 2.5 times is 5 hours. That's a lot of scrolling. So how do you stay relevant with that generation? How do you keep all these prized brands front and center and top of mind of this new consumption? And I'll pass you the ball. We'll round robin together.
Sure. I'd say for us at PepsiCo Foods North America, like our shining example is Doritos. They're our kind of our front runner. They're typically at the bleeding edge of all things, especially in social. And for us, it's been a journey of experimentation. It's been really assembling the right team. So I think we have the luxury of having an in-house social team. So we have that innate connection to our brands through to our legal team, our comms team. So there's a lot of that kind of baked-in structure and ability to move quickly just through the relationships that are existing, and that has allowed us to move more quickly into TikTok and experiment. Right, it's all about experimentation. It's about being bold and ensuring that the folks on my team, for example, that they have that permissibility to experiment, to star in the content themselves, right? So it's been a bit of an evolution, especially for community management, moving from more of this dialogue with consumers, engaging in solely more the comments and things of that nature, to on TikTok, having the team not only act as community managers, but also content creators in their own right. And then really, dialing things up so that it's an and strategy, right? So we're developing a lot of content in-house. We have an in-house creative team. We have an in-house community management team that also now moonlights as content creators in TikTok, because the nature of the content is very different, right? It's what resonates there, it's lo-fi. It's not high design, poster creative, right? Save that for more the advertising push. If you want to engage the pull, you have to really kind of show that human face of your brand. I'd say it's a combination of all of those things, and then also leveraging creators, right, to supplement what our internal teams are creating, and then experimenting along the way, seeing what resonates, and then dialing up what you see working, and then dialing back where you see, the engagement's waning. So it's not really rocket science, it's more just architecting the right systems, getting the right people in place, and then making sure they feel that psychological safety to, do their jobs and actually experiment and play and have fun.
Before we pass the ball, by a show of hands, how many people have social teams in-house? So a few of us, maybe a third of the room. What do you do if you don't have social teams in-house? Do you both have social teams in-house?
We have a one-person lead, but bulk of ours is with agencies. I live on the other side of this, so I'm the pro agency guy on this. I look at it and I say, I just believe there is magic that happens inside the four walls of an agency that I cannot recreate inside my four walls. And I feel it when I walk into the front door of 360i, when I walk into the front door of Vayner. It's just like the music comes on, it starts being a little bit hipper and cooler, and I feel old. And that's when I know I have the right team. And I think that we rely on those people to kick my ass, to be more bold and daring. And they are constantly telling me, do this, do that, and pushing me. And in some ways, I love that relationship. Whereas I feel as if I had that whole team in-house, I don't know if I get pushed as much. And a credit to you guys, because you do great work, but I find I need an agency there to kick my ass.
It's interesting you say that, though, because I'd say conversely on the flip side, so we don't manage absolutely every brand in-house. So we are very deliberate at having a couple brands in the portfolio that we manage through external agencies, and I'm not going to name names, but they are among the elite set, for social especially, and that helps us kind of keep that competitive spirit alive. But I would say, the proof is in the pudding in the analytics, because, my internal in-house team has managed to, out-edge what the external agencies have developed. Our communities are growing faster. They have higher rates of engagement. So I would say I agree in a sense. I think it's healthy to have a spirit of competition, but I do feel like, there is that ability to, be completely on trend, to have an in-house team that is able to, deliver at or above kind of the industry standard of what an agency can produce.
That's beautiful. James and I last night split an Uber. We were talking about this topic, and the conclusion was the employee set cares a lot about the brands. The people that are on your team, they care, and they care about the customers, so they listen just a little closer, and they might make really cool TikTok videos. John, I'll pass you the ball. How do you guys stay relevant?
Yeah, we're the hybrid in between the two, and so, for those of you who manage House of Brands, it's the give and take of having an internal team as you understand the brand and what the consumer is and what they need, but then you've got agency support who gets to see a lot of client sets, right? So before digging into that, but we think about content and being relevant and storytelling in terms of the consumer for each of that brand. And I mean, I can almost sit back and just go, you just answered the question a minute ago, and hey, everybody in the room, you got a master class in how to handle social, right? But the fun of it is, should you be a storyteller or should you be commercial? Should you be about product, or do you want to talk about brand at this highest level? And for us at Jack Links, and I'll stay with Jack Links for a minute, we've got this awesome character in Sasquatch that if any of you are beef jerky eaters, this messing with Sasquatch thing is this breakthrough character that you can take into any social channel, and it resonates, and it can be product, and it can still be this goofy thing, right? That's much harder when you get into brands that are, Larissa's Kitchen, where it's better for you snacking, and it's this authentic voice and female forward. And for us, the way we just think about content creation and connection is very much in that one-to-one space. And what I'd say is we made a playbook, and the first thing you do is just go break it and throw it away in a lot of ways. So let's go experiment and try with some loose guardrails and come back around. And yeah, we do some creative in-house, and yes, we partner with the agency, and yes, we have employees creating content, and yes, our legal team, their brains just explode every time we have this conversation, but it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. John, how about yourself? How do you guys stay relevant?
I think it starts with just really clarity of knowing who you are as a brand. So the clearer and sharper you can be about that and get it down to that pithy statement. Oreo is all about playful connections. Cadbury is all about generosity. And when you get to that level of clarity, it allows you to have distinct creative platforms, and then the work just flies. I mean, there is not, on all of our brands that are super clear, I can sit down with any of the creative directors across our agencies, and they will just have ideas. And when we don't have ideas, I know we're not clear on who we are. And I think that as, we work with partners, that clarity becomes super important. And then are you just shutting up and listening? And I have found since the beginning of social, a lot of my mentors in that space have just emphasized, and I think it's only more true today than when it was at the very beginning of social, is are you listening to consumers? Because if you shut up, they will give you the answer. And that's where a lot of our great collaborations come from, a lot of our great ideas from just really good disciplined social listening. And you tie that up with a great team, psychological safety, you will get really brilliant work.
So a quick recap, at least of what I heard for everyone. There's a concept called shoot, aim, shoot. And I find that social is very much like that. Take the shot. It doesn't have to be perfect. Take the shot. And then aim, recalibrate, listen, collaborate, whether it's with agencies, in-house, the customers themselves. There's a lot of words we heard on this stage. One was employees in-house making content, agencies making content, customers making content, influencers making content. There's a lot of folks at your disposal today that are here to help you. The question is more about, is your brand and the companies that you're working at taking that shot? Hey, let's try this. What if we did let someone on our team make a video? How would that resonate with our customers? What if we did feature one of our customers who's constantly talking about us organically? And that narrative, to your point about listening, you start learning about each and every brand. I'm sure what works for one brand doesn't work for another within your portfolios. Is that fair?
100%. I was going to say, too, as a build, just to the earlier conversation around, and I think as well, defining that brand voice, right? I think what can be a bit liberating is thinking of social, it's an and strategy, right? There's paid social, right? There's paid social where the job to be done, first and foremost, is delivering short-term sales response, right? And that's, where you're really scrutinizing the ROI, you're spending a lot of money on the paid side, and that, that creative really has to deliver strongly. And for us, oftentimes that looks like product right in your face, right? Especially in social where the engagements are fleeting. But knowing that, right, and saying, hey, there's a certain job to be done here with paid social, and primarily they're going to focus on that. We will have cases where creative is more geared towards brand building, right, and longer term equity. But that then liberates the organic social side, to really focus more on the job to be done around putting a human face to the brand, right, more authentically, engaging directly with consumers. But the nature of the content, if I were to show you a slide, right, that shows what our organic content looks like, juxtaposed against what typically we're promoting in paid, which again, does a lot more, admittedly, to drive the flywheel of e-commerce, right? We're very well-oiled machine in terms of making sure all of that paid social is always kind of linking back to e-commerce and driving the flywheel. On organic, we still have a bit of that discipline, and we do ensure that the content has a nod to and ladders to those bigger jobs to be done from a comm standpoint on a brand, but there's more liberty, right? There's more liberty taken because in order to authentically represent the brand in a more human way, you have to, speak in the style of a platform. So that means more leaning into meme culture, right? That looks like lo-fi creative, which for a lot of brand marketers has been unnerving, right? To get them comfortable with what lo-fi creative looks like and how different it is to what they're so used to in terms of being very deliberate and careful on the images they're crafting. That's been a major too for us. But again, it's really emphasizing the performance aspect, right? In terms of if we're trying to win hearts and minds, we're trying to be inherently engaging, whether the content is curated from a creator, it's a partnership with an influencer, or it's content that we've produced in-house. It all has to, pass that muster of, driving performance in terms of, all of those engagement metrics that we closely monitor.
For those of you who are still exclusive to production quality content, one thing to keep in mind is That might be how we grew up, and that's what we consumed, and that's what was relevant. Like, as a little boy, Saturday mornings, I would sneak out of my room and watch cartoons, but there was really only 2 channels available to me. My kids go on YouTube and choose what they watch. And they are watching lo-fi. They are watching user-generated type content. So if that's how they're consuming, how are you speaking to them? It's a good question to ask. And then maybe to help us transition, we asked how to stay relevant. A lot of the answers resonated around content and different ways to source it. But how do you drive that ROI, right? How do you tell the narrative behind social and all this content that you're looking to invest in back to some sort of e-commerce experience or social commerce experience? And maybe, John, I'll ask you to start us off.
Yeah, and to tag on that, I mean, the struggle, especially with executive teams in this new, I mean, it's not new, but the way that we want to think about social media is what is the ROI? And sometimes you go, you got to take a leap of faith, and I don't know, but the mantra of sales overnight, brand over time, and I know other people have heard this and said that, but it's very true, right? So back to, can we connect back and paid to an e-commerce experience? And yes, and now you got social checkout and native social checkout. Is that right for CPG? Is it beauty? Is it, you know, food? And that's a tough question, I think, for a lot of brands, and that may not be where everyone starts their journey when you're on an ROI-focused model versus our inorganic content. Are we looking for impressions in interactions, especially on a new platform? And I think all those things are true to an ROI model, but yeah, I think it's really important, if you're thinking about advice, is just to really be aligned with executive teams on what will we be looking for, and that's really up to us as digital teams to define, because it will always come back to show me the dollars, show me how we've got brand lift, and can we all of a sudden increase brand preference because we're making TikTok? No, we can't. I mean, over time, yeah, maybe we'll start to see those move, but it's a nebulous conversation, because what is ROI for us in an emerging brand versus a mature brand is very different, and very different by platform.
Fantastic. John, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I mean, I find as I've lived the digital journey since, you know, early 2000s, and I think we started out in this place of click-through rates and CTRs, and we've evolved and we matured. And I think as we grow up, and also grow up in organizations, we find that the world is not so binary. It used to be that we could say, just drive this metric and life would be fine. But as you increasingly become accountable, and the industry matures, as our jobs mature, it's a combination of multiple things. So how are we ultimately driving a market share, an ROI, or other metrics? I like to think about it in terms of a few things. One is I think about, how am I progressing on a year-over-year basis? Am I improving year-over-year? What is that target? I tried to get more centered on that versus relativity, because I find that if I improve on a year-over-year basis and follow the consumer, life tends to be work in my favor. Two is, I think very intently about each channel has different pros and cons. There is efficiencies in one, and which is highly not as effective, and I have ones that are the most effective and low efficiency, and I have to attack each of those differently. And then the third thing I would say is really to simplify. You can't do many things well at once. And so if you want to do really advanced things, and we drive a heavy, and we're public about this, driving a very heavy personalization agenda, you have to simplify your media mix. In the US, we work with 9 media partners. For a CPG our size, we're a top 30 advertiser in the world, to be with 9 and have that level of concentration is high, but it allows us to do it really well. And I think that's what it takes if you want to get great at that. You can't do 20 things. Like, how are you going to really have 4 things that you drive that are strategically consistent? And that's how you get the performance. I mean, Mondelez went from average ROI in 2017, and now we are top quartile everywhere around the world, and usually leading the benchmark. And we don't have all big, huge brands, but that's what it takes, is maniacal focus and optimization. And when you simplify, you can drive that performance. And when you don't, you will be stuck somewhere about average, because that's what most people do, average.
That scare anyone? It scared me a little.
It's because I was staring you down while I said it.
You're like, do you want to be average,
Do you want to
David?
be average?
It doesn't
James,
scare
take
me, and I wholly agree on the paid media side of the equation. But again, I think, you know, we relatively recently at PepsiCo, we rolled out, you know, a whole a whole new way of thinking in terms of total connections planning, right? And it really just, it's nothing new per se, but it was really kind of forcing that discipline and that conversation for our marketers to take a pause, take a step back, and really evaluate how are they going to market, whether it's on a campaign or from an evergreen basis, you know, in the totality of communications, right? And where are there all of these missed opportunities? Because we were very much in the past kind of a one-trick pony, very focused energy exclusively on paid media to the detriment, right, of all other channels. And I can say that with confidence because I used to lead paid media before I took on this role in digital marketing and organic social. So I think total connections planning has been quite liberating. You know, one of the core tenets is no dead ends, right? And really thinking about, well, what are all of the various vehicles for communication at your brand's disposal, and how are you maximizing the full gamut of them, right? So that's where I'd say, you know, again, it comes back to an and strategy, right? Email is still relevant. It is still important. Click-through rates still matter, right? Open rates still matter for us, but that's one vehicle of communication, right? The sweet spot is in the synergies, right? When you add up, you know, the cumulative impact of all of those, you know, consumer engagements. And so that's where it's getting our brand teams to think holistically, think in terms of, okay, well, what I'm putting out in market from a paid media standpoint, here are my core channels, but then I'm also activating that message in an authentic way in email through our CRM program. I'm translating it. I'm also, you know, then taking some of the essence of that program and I'm, you know, stylistically adapting it in a more human voice to resonate more strongly in organic social, right? And that can be a challenge for the teams because sometimes they're like, whoa, I'm not quite sure what to do with this. How do I, you know, adapt this in a way that is going to be less push and more pull? But it's those types of challenges where I've seen the team rise to the occasion, or I've seen, you know, through an influencer brief, through a creator brief, I've seen the power of crowdsourcing, right? Where you may not know the answer, we'll put it to the crowd. Someone's going to figure it out there, and they're going to come back with a brilliant and resonant way to give that message legs, you know, and a voice that will, you know, have kind of some organic propellant behind it, just versus it just being a push-based exercise.
Yeah, and to James's point, for perspective, I've been at Social Native for 7 years. I'm the founder. So for 7 years, I've been focused on collaborating with brands to figure out how to use social content to drive sales. And in the beginning, it wasn't the sales part. It was just social content. Like, how to use social content. Please let these kids make content on behalf of your brand. That was like the first year. But over time, as brands started building these large libraries, which we're hearing about here and some of you in the audience, the big question became, well, how does that drive sales? And just to share some perspective of what I'm seeing with about 400 something of the Fortune 500 brands, the best social content can be amplified. So to your point, if it's on organic and you're getting the signals where you mentioned people are raising their hand, maybe you have wild comment rates that you don't usually get. Something about that content is resonating. Don't let it just fall into the organic socials like top 10 list. Do something with it. And doing something can be paid media, it can be email marketing, it can be e-com, it could just be your website, it could be shout outs. Shout outs are currency. It's free. Talk about ROI. Narcissism is a currency. If you have people talking about your brand, feature them. That's exciting. They'll want to collaborate with you. They'll want to be a part of your journey. But if you aren't talking with your customer and you're only talking at them, why would they work for you? And that's really the power of social content, is these people want to work for you, whether it's your employees, your agency, your customers, your influencers. They're choosing to collaborate with you, and that's really, really powerful.
Just to build off that last point, I was going to say, so certainly on paid, right, we're in that reach frequency game, finding that sweet spot. It's all about maximum ROI as measured through MMM. But organically, so I'll speak in terms of organic, right, because that's, you know, the primary objective to drive kind of that organic traction, especially in a platform like TikTok, on Twitter, even to a certain degree, Instagram, organic reach is still, there's still a heartbeat there. It's not maybe quite as strong as it used to be. But we don't operate, even in organic, exclusively, to the absence of paid media. So we have a process, because we love to name our processes, we call it our culture accelerator. And so we have a process where we see certain signals that are indicating, hey, this piece of content is really gaining traction with consumers organically. It's driving above benchmark engagement. We'll take a closer look at that piece of content. If we feel like, hey, it's either attached to a broader cultural conversation, a trend, or it may be something that, it's almost a trend we've created ourselves to a certain degree, a little micro trend, but it's resonant with people. They're loving it. Well, we have, dollars set aside in all of our brands' paid media budgets that allow us that ability to apply accelerant in an agile way to those top performing pieces of content. The objective, again, is not tying it back to, it's not going to be measured, that one little piece of content in MMM. There's not a brand lift study attached to it. There's not a sales lift study attached to it. But, up to our C-suite, they've acknowledged that, hey, we can't exclusively be a one-trick pony to the detriment, right, of this broader kind of opportunity of total connections. And so within reason, right, within a matrix, within a framework of like a 70-20-10, it's certainly a much smaller investment than what we're making in that bigger pool of reach frequency dollars. But we are able to then amplify some of that organic content to give it even greater legs and more reach within a platform like a TikTok or on a Twitter, for example.
A good perspective for all of us is content can be amplified, but the creator can be amplified as well. So perspective, at Social Native, we've done over 1.2 million collaborations for brands with different creators. Of those 1.2 million, 250,000 of them have been reactivated over 10 times. There's a couple lessons in that. The first is not all 1.2 are going to be fantastic. Like, you have to play this game of shoot, aim, shoot. So first take that shot. But then when you do, there's an opportunity, whether it's the content itself and you want to amplify it, but it could very well also be the creator. Whether it's that person in-house on your team, whether it's one of your customers that just really loves your brand and is very creative, and or a collaboration with a creator, influencer. Hey, I want you on retainer. You're good at this, and you love my brand, and you have easy access to the retail store or whatever it may be. That can be exciting. And with that, John, I'll have you kick us off. Creator economy, big buzzword today. What does that mean to you? How do you take advantage of it? Is there opportunity there for your portfolio of brands?
So it depends on the brand and the portfolio. And it depends on the market, to be honest. Like, we lean heavily into that in markets like obviously China, India, a lot of Brazil, a lot of our emerging markets. The US is a little bit less, I would say, partially because almost we think of Oreo almost as its own creator. I mean, it certainly has, in food and beverage, it has the largest social following, most conversations. And so in some ways it plays in that space. I think a lot of how we think about the collaborations in Oreo is kind of how we do it. And how I think about it is, I've worked on Oreo like probably most of my last decade. And the thing how I think about it is there's things we have to do to keep an edge on that brand. Because if you don't do it, it becomes really flabby. This is the word I would use. Oreo can become flabby. Like, ugh. And so you have to do things like Game of Thrones. You have to do things like Lady Gaga. You have to do things that just put a nice cultural edge on that brand, because if you don't, you will lose that relevancy. And it was, if you go back in time, like 10 years ago, Oreo was a low single-digit brand. +3, +4, not all that exciting. And through some price pack architecture, but really, 100th birthday and that work done by Lisa Mann and 360i in the beginning of that engagement changed the trajectory of that. That and a famous tweet in the Super Bowl put Oreo in a zeitgeist. And pretty much, I think of my team's job every day is not to screw that up. Because once you get into a cultural zeitgeist, things just start happening to you. Game of Thrones talks to you. You can get a meeting with just about anyone. Lady Gaga, that becomes tangible, doable. Pokemon, everything that you see in the portfolio, I could trace back in some way to that original moment. And so I think that those collaborations are important because they keep a social edge on the brand that, if not, could be really just a boring cookie that mom and dad give their kid. And that would be boo. So I think that that's how I think about it. So you have to use creators in the right way. Every brand has a different play. We use it a lot more in SPK because there's some great collaborations. But be choiceful, be thoughtful, make sure it serves your purpose, and then think about how you're managing that brand. And I find sometimes it's really important. This is where great brand directors are really important. Because if left to our own devices, we can get caught up, digital teams and socially can get caught up in the hype of, here's what I'm going to do. But as a brand leader, you have to think about how this plays out on the journey. Where's the sharpness of this brand? And where am I going with that? Like, if my brand is here in volume and I want it to be here, what is this adding to it? What is the purpose of this in the piece? And so there's an entire column of the brand strategy for Oreo that is just about social relevance. And that is a real revenue driver. And I could tell you how much net revenue we're going to put on through that social revenue. And literally, those collabs are a critical part of how you get there. But that's not going to be how I build Ritz. That's not how I'm going to build some of the other brands in the portfolio. So each one of them has their own play. Nutter Butter more, organic, does a few pieces. But each one of those has to have their own play. And you got to be really clear, what's it there for? And if you lose it and you forget to do it, because there was some years where we forgot to do it, the brand falls out of that zeitgeist. And consumers will tell you when you're falling out of it.
Cool. John, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I think, and we're on the early part of our journey with the creator economy. I mean, let's be really honest about where we are with all of our brands, which I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room that are in that same spot. And the way that we think about creators currently with our marketing team is that those creators can reach people that we don't know are fans, or they have an audience, right? And I think we talked about this previously in some calls, but it came out of PepsiCo, and I forget who said it, what her name was, 2 years ago at South by. It said, personas in marketing are probably becoming less relevant or should be dead because you can't tell the whole truth about your consumer by focusing on one person or one name, right? And that was a really powerful thing for me to hear. Because we're aware that we've got these biases in our marketing. We're aware that we've got these biases in our communities that we've built. And when do we think about developing in a really authentic way? Not only can consumers see themselves in our marketing, but are we helping to reach them with other voices? And so for us, we have to get outside of our own heads within our organization, our marketing team, and creators have become that way to do that and a way to think about that because we don't know. So we're learning. So help us learn about that, right? That's how we approach those creators. Take your message however you want to do it. Let's see if it resonates with our audience. Let's see if we can find some magic in those pieces of content that you're going to create that we can't.
Beautiful. Democratizing creates opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's what the creator economy is. You mentioned agencies and the power there. Imagine unleashing thousands of people at your disposal to be your creative minds. James, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say from my perspective, and certainly on the Frito-Lay side with a brand like Doritos, right? We've been investing in creators before it was kind of cool, right? Before it truly was a creator, before there was a whole economy. If you think back to what Doritos used to do with Crash the Super Bowl, if any of you guys in the audience remember that program, but it was all around crowdsourcing, literally the Super Bowl ad, right? And whoever, made that cut and won Crash the Super Bowl, they won $1 million, but more importantly, all the fame and notoriety that came along with being able to air their creative on Super Bowl. Hugely successful program for us, right? And we've taken the learnings from that, and now in a modern context, right, that work continues. So on Doritos, for example, we actually have our own little, creator community called Legion of Creators. And that's a community that's very special and specific to Doritos. And we develop kind of more of that richer kind of direct relationship with creators, and they help fuel, Doritos content across a multitude of channels. Taking a step back, right, thinking more broadly, I think, it's really empowering to think, creator economy, we're all creators. Anyone can be a creator, right? So then, if you're thinking in that terms, right, look at your platform, right, with Social Native. It's like, how do I now start to unlock, and unleash the power of creators across a multitude of levels, right? Whether it's from, your consumer, someone who's a brand evangelist of yours, right? And they want to create content for you. They're naturally creating content for you. How do you harness that, and how do you incorporate that into the narrative and the fame aspect, right, in terms of amplifying that individual's work and giving them, that nod and notoriety, but then thinking through the different tiers of creators, right, and as they move up that tier and there's more of an influencer aspect to, they can not only create content, but then they can, be a part of, helping promote your brand or your handles, and there's a more deliberate effort to try to tap their influence, as a propellant for your brand, and thinking about how do you experiment right across all of those different types of creators. So to give you a real example, most recently on TikTok now, we're experimenting with, trying to understand, hey, is it activating a whole legion of more micro influencers or creators, right? People with smaller following, and is it activating that legion and having them tag our Doritos account on TikTok? Is that going to help us kind of fuel audience acquisition from a creator standpoint, from an influencer standpoint? Is it more targeting less, but in that mid-tier, or is it more going after kind of the biggest, highest caliber influencers and having them create? What mix or what combination of an approach is going to, create the best result with a goal of driving follower acquisition? So it really comes down to objectives, right? It's understanding, anyone can be a creator, and then leveraging the different types of creators and testing and learning as you go to see what works and what doesn't.
For all of us in the audience who might be new to the creator economy, James is making a fantastic point, which is everyone is a creator. So if you want to paint a rainbow in your mind of all different colors, you've got customers who are hopefully the largest volume of creators in your ecosystem that are there for you and are able to create if they're not creating already. If you're not prompting them to create, you're missing out on opportunity. Above that, you can keep going up this ladder, nano, micro, influencers, people who have amassed followings, and unlock their potential. But ultimately, shoot, aim, and shoot is the path. I don't believe there is one. From every brand we've worked with, time and time again, I've seen the same thing. One brand, micro-influencers crushing it. Another brand, their customers are just so in love with them, and the content's fantastic. Others go all the way up to the top and need celebrity activations. Most do everything. And if you activate that entire spectrum, you're paralleling your customer base, which is a spectrum that is very diverse. And different things resonate with different people. So authentic content made by one of your customers might resonate with me, whereas John, it might be a celebrity that resonates with him, right? But that beauty is the beauty of social, where you're allowed to be really nimble and say, well, let me try a variety of different things, and then I'll assess, and then once I assess, then I'll aim and shoot again. Do you want to add something, John?
Yeah, I think that one thing that I find to be important in like why I get passionate, why I fell in love with social again, because I fell out of love with it for a while. And I can say I was at Twitter, I built the video product, and there was a time I was like, I don't know about this, and I didn't know what its role was going to be in my model. But I am really passionate about the idea that mass marketing is dumb and lazy. I'm like I get out of bed every day and put my feet on the floor because I think it's really that dumb and lazy. And I think that social for me, with what you can do with creators, with what you can do in targeting, from a precision and a data point, is helping me find a new rebirth of social. Because if not for that, if it still remained a mass reach frequency play, I really wouldn't care anymore, and I could really live without it on many levels. And I think that that ability to target and match up the right content, the right creator, and really, to your point, through optimization, unlock why people buy. Because even some of the most mass consumed brands in the world, Doritos, Oreo, jerky. I love jerky too. So like, I'll swap you later. Oreos for
Oreos,
jerky.
yeah,
it's a
we're
deal.
on. Do
But
it.
I think the key thing is like, there's different reasons people come to it and different things that people resonate with. And the ability of social to unlock that level of relevancy and personalization is why I've fallen in love with it again. Because if not, I could really lose it and I wouldn't cry.
And I wouldn't limit your brand. Don't limit your brand to just one creative and one message. You can empower people with your brand guidelines. I'm not asking you to let them go wild, but keep in mind, people create content that's authentic to them. So just to create a simple example, a vehicle, the four of us might drive the same vehicle, but we love it for different reasons. Maybe I need the trunk space and soccer practice, and James needs the roof rack for surfing or whatever it may be. Your customer will showcase those things. Whether Oreo is a really good example, people like to eat their Oreos in different ways. I know my kids like have a blast just building things with Oreos. They're not even eating them. And it's like, wow, that's unique. That's interesting. Let's share that story. And that'll likely resonate with another family. And with that, I see the blinking red 0. I believe it's time for questions, assuming there are any. We will be very hurt if there aren't any.
Actually, we do not have time for questions.
Oh, snap.
We are out of time for this panel, but if you're interested
Okay,
in
I'll just-
messaging people
Yes,
on the...
I'll close out real quick with
Yeah,
one
yeah.
statement, especially for those who have questions. I would encourage everyone who's trying to crack social to collaborate with your peers. The people at this stage, myself, everyone in the audience, we're learning every single day. If you aren't asking questions, there's no way to grow in the social ecosystem. Thank you. I'm sorry we missed the questions.